Hey guys, I'm Will from Tested.
And I'm Norm from Tested.
Norm, every week we do, or most every week at least, we do a couple of podcasts.
Yeah, podcasting is one of the big things we do, and one of the questions that we get asked occasionally is, what type of gear do you use for podcasting?
So I wrote up a big post, I think middle of last year, that explains our set as it was then, but things change over time and new stuff comes out and makes things a little bit easier. The weird thing about the way we shoot podcasts and the way we do podcasts is we have two dramatically different setups. We have this setup where we're at right now, the studio set, where there are all sorts of wires and cables and stuff running under channels underneath this table.
Mics that may or may not even be plugged in for the purposes of this video.
We're just not there. You're not even talking into a mic. That's not the mic you're talking into.
Nope, I got a Lav mic right here.
But this is more or less a permanent set. We don't move it very often. If we do, it's for something specific. I have a great big mixer set up back here. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Basically, this is a studio environment. We're not as concerned. We have better control over things like ambient noise. We're in the back of a room, far away from the street, so we don't get a lot of street noise and stuff like that. So it's a little bit more forgiving environment. We also do a lot of podcasts at Adam's shop and other places as well. M5, his house, at events all over the place. And those are actually much more difficult shoots, even though the podcasts are shorter, because the noise in his shop in Adam's shop varies wildly from week to week. If there's a police car going by, then you'll hear that in the background. We do some stuff differently for those shoots, and it's taken us a little while to kind of figure out what the optimal setup is for both places.
And that's a travel setup. That's not this same gear.
It's portable, yeah.
It's a completely different set of equipment.
Well, it's not completely different.
Some overlapping equipment, but that's, for example, if we wanted to, like for example at CES when we recorded a podcast in a hotel room. Yeah,
so there's really, if you break it down, there's probably 4 or 5 different kind of variants of the same kits that I can bring places when we want to do a podcast. But I think first thing to do is to talk about the things that are in common across most of them.
And how they're different from, for example, if someone were to podcast at home and they were using either a headset with a mic or they bought one of those blue Snowball mics and are doing something with Google Plus, what the differences are when you're talking about professional equipment.
So we'll get to that at the end. What we have here in both cases is dramatic overkill if you just want to record a podcast over Skype with friends of yours, or if you're just going to do Google Hangouts or something like that.
So what are the advantages then?
Of what we're using?
Yeah.
Ben, that's a really good question. The main advantage is that the consumer stuff that I would recommend for that type of thing is mostly USB powered. It's USB interface to the computer, and it's USB powered. So it's a significant challenge to connect multiple USB microphones into, say, one piece of mixing software. Whereas with these microphones that we use on both most of the still Untitled's and the regular studio show, you plug it into a mixer. That's what this guy is. This is I think this is the Behringer, I wrote it down someplace, the Xenix 1202FX. We used this for a long time as the portable mixer. I also used it in the studio. It has 4 XLR inputs. Those are those guys across the top. And what they let you do is connect big microphones, like the ones that we'll talk about in a minute, and give them phantom power and all the stuff that they need to actually work. You can't do that with USB. There's no, at least as far as I'm aware, there's no such thing as a USB mixer. And what happens if you don't have the mixer, you lose sync on timing on different channels and stuff like that. It gets real weird, and you don't want to do that if everybody's sitting in the same room. It's better to spend money on a mixer and get XLR microphones or microphones that are both XLR and USB than to do this.
So if someone was just Skyping or using Google Plus or Google Hangouts,
go get a blue Snowball for 60 bucks. They're great.
Because Google's taking care of that mixing.
It handles it on the software side. It's a different situation. Now, what you lose when you have that is the ability to do post-processing and correction and stuff like that. When you do a podcast with Google Plus, with a Google Plus Hangout, it just goes straight to YouTube. It's even hard to get an MP3 file out of that. You have to download the video from YouTube, rip out the audio, re-encode it as an MP3 or whatever, and then upload it to a server someplace else.
So in terms of thinking about hardware, what's the correct logical way to think from voice to the recording source or the recording device?
So the thing you want to do is think about how you're going to use, what your use case is for the hardware. If you're sitting in a room by yourself, recording yourself playing Spelunky or Call of Duty or whatever, you can get a USB microphone. If you're using Skype or Google Hangouts or something like that to intermediate as the podcast, kind of keep the podcast going. Even if you say, the thing that we used to do at Maximum PC was we would use Skype. We would each record individual tracks on our own machines, and then we'd send them up to Jeremy or Andy Bauman
or
producers who would then sync up all those tracks with their master recording of the Skype system back at their house. And what you ended up with was a really good quality podcast recording that no one was in the same room to record. No one had to be in the same room to record.
And not reliant on the current internet connection at that time.
Yeah, if the internet connection dropped for a couple of seconds, as long as the conversation wasn't interrupted by that, nobody would know. Now the downsides of doing that are that it's pretty difficult to get audio and video, especially audio and video, but even just 4 or 5 tracks of audio synced with a master track can be a little bit tricky, especially if something drops for a couple of seconds. Then you have to figure out how long the drop was and get everything lined up right, or else you have weird situations where people sound like they're talking over each other but really aren't. That's a perfectly good way to do a podcast, especially if you have friends across the country and you want to do a regular show and you don't see each other very often.
What if some people had laptops and were using a USB mic and recorded individually on their laptops in the same room?
It's the same problem. It's the exact same thing. It's like I said, it's not ideal. And then when you have them in the same room, you have the added problem of each mic picking. Even with these are directional cardioid mics. We'll talk about that in a minute. But even though these are fairly directional microphones, I still hear you on my channel. I still hear Adam on your channel. There's a little bit of bleed over, and when you're in the same room, that effect is accentuated, and it gives you weird echoes and stuff like that then you have to do a lot of post-correction work to remove.
All right, so what's the first piece of hardware we're going to talk about?
So the first piece, start with the microphones.
Okay.
If you're recording multiple people in the same room, get XLR microphones. If only one person is going to be in each room, get a USB microphone. These are, we bought these because they're great quality and they're very reasonably priced. They're $150 each, which sounds like a lot for a microphone, but if you're a musician and you know anything at all about microphones, mics get crazy expensive. And I'll actually break one apart so you can see what it looks like. There's a couple of different components here. When you buy these microphones, they come with the stand, the HE2035s do. And they come with a shock mount as well as the stuff you need to screw it onto most tripods. They don't come with this guy. This is a poof. It's a windscreen. And it's like a condom for the top of the microphone. But you jam it on there, and that helps remove plosives. So when you say things like p or v that make popping noises in the microphone if it's unprotected. Fricatives as well. This helps eat up that stuff so that you don't get the loud, annoying, popping, cracking noise in the microphone. The shock mount's important because especially if you have it on a boom arm and you're moving the mic around like a lunatic, having it on the shock mount will help reduce clinks and bangs and pops and stuff like that. A cheaper option than using the foam hat is what's called a pop filter. It basically looks like a piece of pantyhose stretched across an embroidery hoop. That'll do the same thing to remove the plosives, or help remove the plosives at least. I like this better because we have to travel with these. The pop filters fall off and get broken and poked and all that stuff. These things are pretty indestructible.
Yeah. How much are these?
These are expensive. They're $40 each.
$40 for this microphone
for a hat. Yeah, you can get cheaper ones, but like I said, I was more interested in having something that was going to hold up because we do carry them around all the time. If we have to replace 2 $20 ones a year, we might as well have bought the $40 one. The microphones are HE2035s. They're Audio Technicas. We've been using this microphone or its predecessor since we started it tested. It's a cardioid, I can't remember, it's a 90-degree or something microphone. The gist is you talk into the front of it where my mouth is. Hold on, switch back to me, Joey. Yeah, you talk into this side, not this side. So if you talk in this, you're not going to hear anything. If you talk into this, you hear stuff. What cardioid means is that the audio, the pickup area is a kind of, it looks almost like a speech bubble. Like it comes out in a diagonal shape and then rounds out, and there's a big sweet spot. So you can be anywhere from like here to here in front of this microphone, and it'll sound okay. It's best if you're right up close. And they're very forgiving mics. They're pretty good at isolating the excess channel stuff because of the cardioid pattern. You don't want to buy, there's a bunch of different patterns of microphones you can buy. You don't probably want a unidirectional because then you have to stay directly in the spot. Unidirectional mics are kind of like what singers use a lot of times when they're, like rock acts, stuff like that. So then they don't pick up the other instruments and the other speakers in the background. Omnidirectional is also bad because then you'll get everything. You'll hear if somebody's typing, if somebody's clicking on a gamepad or something like that, you'll pick that up. A lot of microphones especially at the consumer end, are configurable. So the blue Snowball, for example, can switch between a cardioid pattern and an omnidirectional pattern. You might use the omnidirectional pattern if you're, let's say,
recording multiple people.
Yeah, if you have 3 people sitting around a round table and you want to get everybody, it'll do an okay job at that. But you'll get a lot of room noise with that as well, so you hear a lot of.
Is that faking it through software, or is there hardware? To
no, there's
between?
2 different microphones inside. That microphone, as I understand it. When you use omnidirectional microphones, especially in larger rooms that don't have a lot of baffling and sound baffling and stuff, you'll get a lot more kind of room hiss, and it just doesn't sound as good. So you can there are lots of cheaper mics. There are some new mics that came out since we bought these 2 years ago that are comparable and probably even sound better. But this is what we use because we've had it for 2 years. And
then, of course, you got to plug the mic into something, so you use XLR cable. Does it matter where we get the XLR cable from?
I have no idea. We buy monoprice XLR cables because they're cheap, and we're hard on them. So when we destroy one, then we just buy another one for $6 or whatever.
What's the proper care of the XLR cable, and where are the bad points? Like, is this a weak?
It's the normal rules that apply to every single cable you own. Any place the cable goes into a connector is a point of failure. So with the XLR cables, you don't want to do a lot of wiggling side to side, and you don't want to put a lot of stress on the wire where it comes out of the bottom of the connector.
And they go pretty long.
Normal rules apply.
They can go pretty long.
Yeah, you can get 50, 60-foot cables. Most of ours are 6 to 12 feet because we want to be able to sit far enough away from the mixer that everybody can be comfortable.
Okay. The stand?
The stands. We have a bunch of different kinds of stands we use. We use everything from my old Rock Band microphone stand, which is just a $15 mic stand with an articulated arm on the top. This guy right here that's on my desk is a really cheap boom from Amazon that I bought when we did Oktobercast a couple years ago, and I need to be able to turn from left to right.
And you can swing it?
You can swing it. It's spring-armed, and it more or less stays where you leave it. I actually just bought a nicer one for home a few days ago. That's a Rode. This was $50. That's $100. So the nicer ones, you can actually get mounts that you screw into the table, and then it'll just look like the microphone hangs out of the table. The best find we have are these guys. These are just bass drum mics, bass mic stands. So they're designed for, the big round drum on a drum kit that has the hole in the front.
And that has the band's logo?
Yeah, so you put this thing on the other side of that into the hole, and with a drum mic, but the nice thing about them is they're about the right height for a table. They have a great big heavy bass, so they don't tip. And if you look at it, it tilts, it turns, it'll go up and down. So even when we're sitting on a coffee table or something like that, we can still use these mic stands. Also, they were really cheap. They're like $20 each. Yeah. So and much less unwieldy than my old Rock Band.
You can find them at any Guitar Center.
Guitar Center, Musician's Friend, your local music shop, anybody like that will have them. They'll probably only have one. You can also get them from Amazon, I think. So that's, a couple other things. Headphone amp.
First of all, the XLR is plugged into, like we said before, the mixer.
Not always. And the setup's different on different places. So we used to use the mixer on the road and at home. We've since switched. We got something new a few months ago that's really changed my life. The bad thing about the mixer is it requires a power source. So at one point we needed, I think, 4 plugs everywhere we went in order to make sure the camera had power, the headphone amp had power, the mixer had power, and the laptop had power. Because that doesn't actually record. The mixer doesn't actually record. It's just an interface.
It's just to manage the levels and provide power to the mics.
There's some other stuff that it can do too. That Behringer mixer is actually a 12 input. It takes 4 XLRs, can provide phantom power to 4 XLRs. Phantom power is just the 48 volts that a microphone requires to work. Like these most studio mics require some sort of phantom power, or you can plug a battery in line. We didn't want to deal with batteries because that's a hassle. The mixer lets you turn people up and down. With this mixer, you can also pipe in other sources. So you can play music through it, play Skype through it, whatever.
Pull your computer into this and have a soundboard.
A good mixer. The reason we stopped using this and switched over to the Yamaha. So this Behringer is about $90 new. It doesn't have any recording mechanism built in. It doesn't have a DAC or an ADC, so it doesn't have a way to convert analog sound that's coming through here into digital sound. I actually have, it's underneath the table and it's all taped up, so I didn't break it out. But it is a Behringer UCA202. It's $30. It's basically a USB sound card, but it's kind of a fancy one.
Right.
It'll do 48 kilohertz sampling, which is DVD quality audio, not CD quality audio.
And it's basically you need that to plug your audio inputs into your computer to record.
Yeah, so it serves two purposes, and we still use that with the Yamaha mixer as well. It let us pipe audio out to the computer where we record in GarageBand or Audition or something like that. It also lets us send sound back if we want to play music live during the show, and it lets people hear that through their headphones. Okay. So the other thing that comes out of the mixer is a headphone signal so that people in the studio can hear what they're saying. Right. This is another Amazon find. This is the ARTcessories Head Amp 4. It is a 4-port headphone amplifier. It includes 4 both 1/8 and 1/4 inch jacks, and then 1/8 and 1/4 in. So it works with pretty much anything we would use. It has discrete volume controls for each output. So that means if Adam wants more volume and I want less volume and you want even less volume than that, we can all get our volumes to a comfortable level. When we do Oktobercast and have a bunch of guests, Joey has a big 8-port headphone amp that was much more expensive and much nicer that we roll in here for that. But most of the time we don't need that. The reason you use headphones even when you're sitting in a studio is that when you have the headphones on and you're talking to the microphone, you can hear yourself as well as other people.
You hear just the same mix as if what the listeners
exactly.
Listen to.
Well, maybe not exactly the same mix because I usually tweak it a little bit, but what it does tell you is you'll immediately know if you get off axis or if you start talking like this and aren't talking to the microphone, you immediately hear it and you know, oh, I need to turn and talk to the microphone, which is great if you're having people on who aren't regular talking to a podcast, especially, and even if they're regular podcasters, everybody's equipment is a little bit different. So these microphones have a different shape pattern than everyone else's, and like it's helpful for people who aren't familiar with the setup.
Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't.
Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. The last thing that's common to everything is the headphones. We use these. These are Sennheiser HD202s, I think. They're like $25 each, $20 each on Amazon. We've been using these since we started at Whiskey. I think Vinny bought them when they first launched because they needed some studio headphones. They sound really good. They're comfortable for long periods of time. They're cheap enough that if you step on them and break them, then it's okay. I use a different pair of headphones just so I have a little bit more clarity on the audio, and I can tell, because when I'm listening, I'm also adjusting the board. It's really important that I know that there's clipping. These are my now ancient HD 580s. They're Sennheisers as well. And they were the first nice pair of headphones I ever bought. They're a lovely sound headphone. The thing that I love about them is that pretty much everything is user replaceable. The cables come out, the headphone band has been replaced a couple of times, the ear cup covers have been replaced a couple of times. I stepped on them once and broke a cup off entirely and was able to super glue it back. So they've been to hell and back, but they've been really reliable and are sound really nice.
And people can bring their own headphones.
You bring your own headphones. I generally don't like using earbuds. Yeah. Just because they're uncomfortable for long periods of time, and also the cable's usually a little bit too short. So that's that. I always have a ton of extra cables around. We always carry an extra XLR too, because they do tend to break at the worst possible moment. We have extenders for both 1/8 inch and 1/4 inch stereo and mono runs. Okay. What else do we carry? We carry USB cables. All sorts of stuff.
So that's primarily for the
this is the common stuff. So the mixer we're using for the studio is a Yamaha. Where is it on my list? Here we go. It's a Yamaha. It's old. It's an MG166CX USB. This is, I think, the first mixer that Vinny bought when they launched Giant Bomb.
It's basically, you can't see it right now, but it looks like this mixer but blown up.
Yeah, it has, I think, 10 XLR inputs, so you can run 10 phantom-powered microphones off of it at once. It also has a handful more RCA line-level inputs. The neat thing about it that this mixer doesn't really have is it has groups. So what that means is that you can assign each individual channel to a group, and then you have separate outputs for each of the 4 groups that the mixer supports, as well as a stereo output and a master output. And what that lets you do is, say, have a Skype call come in on one input on the mixer, don't send that guy's audio back out to him because he'll get terrible lag if you do. And then also record both the overall mix, including the Skype call, as well as a no version, just the people in the studio and not the Skype call, so that when he sends you his file later, you can sync it up and get it into the system. We did that with Adam when he was traveling. We've done that for Oktobercast and stuff like that. It just gives you the group ability. It gives you a lot more flexibility with what you in a weird environment where we frequently have like 5 or 6 different things going on, it lets us use this for 8 microphones, video game PC, Skype calls, and like 3 other things.
And audio complexity, the mixing compounds in complexity when you're adding all these variables in, especially when people need feedback.
If it's one of the reasons that when we do, there's a couple reasons we don't do a lot of Skype podcasts. One is that I think Ryan Davis told us this when we first started, and I think he's right, that having face-to-face interaction lets the podcast move better because you don't have those pauses where you're waiting to see if somebody's taking a breath or if they're going to continue their thought, or if they're opening the floor for someone else to speak. And when you're in the room with people, then you can kind of have that. And you end up talking over each other a little bit more, which is bad. But I think overall, it feels like a more natural conversation. Right. So yeah, the mixer, like I said, again, if you're, the one reason you might want to get a mixer is if you plan to stream console stuff without using the onboard interfaces. Yeah. And if you want to mix, say, your voice and the console audio at the same time, you need a mixer to do that. So you'll pipe in the game console audio through one of the analog inputs, you'll pipe a microphone in the other, and then you can adjust the levels independently, which means that if the game volume gets too loud, you can turn it down a little bit. If you're too soft, you can turn yourself up a little bit. If you're streaming PC games, it's not really necessary. When you're using, say, OBS or XSplit or something like that, one of the tools that are designed for streaming PC games,
you can adjust in there.
You just adjust it in the software, and it's a software problem. Yeah. So that's the common stuff. We use the headphones everywhere. We use the microphones everywhere. Mixers off and on depending on what we're doing. The studio setup, I think we're pretty good on. We haven't talked about cameras yet. For studio, we use our Panasonic studio cameras. There's one there, and there's one there, and there's one there, and there's one there, and there's one over there, and yeah. Those we pipe via SDI, which is it's like professional HDMI basically, into a TriCaster, which is essentially a video mixer. Joey's in there flipping switches on that right now. He can put fire up underneath us if he wants, whatever with that thing. Yeah. And then in the studio, we pipe those podcasts directly to YouTube. So rather than save a video file that's going to be 200 gigabytes and have to chop the ends off, put the bumpers on, all that stuff, and then upload it again, we just upload it as we're recording. Yeah. And that's made some interesting mistakes over the years, but it saves us from having to do 6 hours of post-processing on every 2-hour podcast that we do. That's kind of it. We have studio lights and stuff here. You don't need that stuff at home. You could just get a nice soft white light bulb and put a shade over it if you're going to sit at a desk or something like that. Little backlighting is good. Yeah. It's not necessary. A lot of people just sit in the delicious blue glow of their monitor. So there you go. Now, we've added something new, and this is, I think, the most exciting piece of hardware that we've bought in years. We didn't even buy this. It was given to us. This is the Zoom H6. And give him a little bit of the side shot there, Norm, because that's the exciting part. It is an audio recorder and field mixer. It's a software field mixer. It's not a great mixer. But it has 4 discrete XLR inputs, provides phantom power even using batteries. You can buy an adapter that'll let you hook 2 more microphones to it using XLR cables. And it also has a handful of other, it has like a omnidirectional microphone. It has this weird bidirectional thing. It has replaced a lot of what I used to carry. It replaced the mixer. It uses, we use Analoops in it, rechargeable batteries. That thing and a stick mic I can chuck in my bag and take to, say, PAX or convention or whatever, and do interviews with people on the site without any problem.
So let's explain what all the inputs and stuff, because you can see the XLR inputs pretty easily. You have the 4 right here on the side, and then on the top you have your levels for that, so you can adjust the volume, the input levels for each of those people, and then Use output, obviously. Do you plug this into, for example?
So I plug the headphone. You're probably not supposed to do this because it's sending an amp signal to an amp device. But that plugs into the headphone mixer so that everybody can hear what they're saying. Yep. There's also a line level out, which I pipe into the camera solely to make syncing the audio and video a little bit easier.
But the coolest thing is it also records.
Well, so yeah, there's a couple of neat things about it. One is that it is a Swiss Army knife for audio people, and there are different versions of this as well. This is the 6-port compatible one. I think there's a 2-port compatible one that's significantly less expensive. And there's a 4-port one as well. What this does is it'll serve as either a USB interface that you can use as, just like I would use the mixer, to record audio into a PC program, like GarageBand or Audition or Pro Tools or something like that.
Digital signal?
Yeah, it has a DAC. We'll convert that down. I think it even lets you do multi-track. I never ever use it for that just because it doesn't work with our workflow. The neat thing is that it'll record 4 channels independently, multi-track. So what that means is instead of getting out of our Yamaha in the studio, I get one file, everybody's mixed into the same file. So that means if you start having a coughing fit midway through the episode or have to take a phone call or something, I can't edit out your bits without getting whatever else is there gone too. With this, you get a separate wave file for each input that's connected. Assuming you don't have to do that, you can configure it to mix one in. But what that means is if I accidentally have one person hotter than the other when we're in Atoms because I wasn't able to get the levels exactly right, or somebody leans in or leans out or whatever, I can fix that later.
In post, and GarageBand will recognize it.
GarageBand Audition, all of that. You import each one as an individual file, you line them up on the left side of the thing, and they're just synced. It's great.
That's magic.
We also use this when we're doing videos and we have more than 2 people on camera at once. It's much easier to have 4 audio files from one device that are all synced than 2 from each camera or whatever. It means we don't have to bring an extra camera places to do 4 audio streams.
Or when people shoot video with DSLRs, they use this, and they used to have mini audio recorders.
Right.
This one has multiple inputs. And then you can also record your DSLR for your environment and then sync it up.
Exactly. I did an interview last year when I was at PAX with the Sennheiser folks. And I was the only one there. I took a monopod and this guy and a GoPro and my mirrorless camera and Google glasses. And somehow Joey cobbled together an okay-looking interview out of that.
So you were like Dick Van Dyke with all the musical instruments, but for audio equipment.
Pretty much. I was 2 steps away from being a chimney sweep. I really can't overemphasize what an unbelievable device that is. Again, if you're only recording in your house or in your office, you don't need it. It's complete overkill. But I did, it's robust enough that during Oktobercast, I plugged it into a line level out from the mixer, and just every 2 hours I started and stopped. And it just rolled straight from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next.
And we'll also plug into power, so you don't need.
Yeah, it has a mini USB port for power. Yep. It saves files to a SD card. I think it goes up to 32 gigs. 32 gigs, even at 48 kilohertz wave file, is a ton of audio. And you can control each track individually, so you don't have to record all 4 tracks. You can combine tracks 1 and 2 into a stereo input if you want. You can also do that in post if you care. And it has that bus on the front to connect other accessories. We have, like I said, there's a shotgun mic that you can buy. We have an omnidirectional mic, and we have a it's a weird interview mic, but you aim 2 different mics across each other, and it does a kind of nice job removing room noise. It's a better option than an omnidirectional for interviewing, like a back and forth interview with 2 people.
It's the kind of thing that 5 years ago you would blow everyone's mind away.
Yeah.
Magic.
Or it would have cost $20,000. Yeah. Maybe 10 years ago. 5 years ago, the H4 was out, I think, and that was a revolutionary device. So it's $400 just for the box. If you get the starter kit with the 2 additional mics, which is what we did, it's for $500. So it's not inexpensive. Again, it's a thing for professionals. And the big amazing thing about it is that it's small enough that you just drop it in your bag, kind of don't know it's there. Yeah. So that's the big thing when we're out and about. Let's see, other stuff that I carry when we're going out are these guys. So this is just a USB power brick. It's generic. It probably came with a tablet or something 2 years ago. We have a bunch of those that we keep in the bag because the mixer uses those, the GoPros use those, and the enemy of recording in the field is batteries. The camera we use most of the time when we're out. Sometimes we use your SLR, which is what a Canon 60. It has a 30-minute time limit, which isn't ideal. The GoPro is actually quite robust for what it is. It produces an MP4 file. Now that I'm editing in Premiere, it's a lot easier to manage those. You used to have to transcode those with Final Cut.
And with the LCD screen in the back, you can monitor.
You can aim it. Yeah, that's the important thing. Otherwise, you end up with. If you look at the first few episodes of Still Untitled we did with GoPros, we had we had a couple episodes where there's real weird crops and people are half out of frame and stuff like that.
Still overheats if you record too long.
Yeah, so the GoPro is not a great solution for like a 2-hour podcast. It's fine for 30 minutes or an hour. You kind of want to turn it on and off now and then. There's also. It's not a professional tool, so there's clock problems with it. What that means is that over a long period of time, the length of time that it thinks has passed versus something that's really good at recording has passed drifts. So my audio files that come out of the Zoom will be 3 seconds longer than the video that's on the GoPro. Which wouldn't be a problem, except you want people notice the lips not moving in time with the voice. Yeah. So then you have to rate adjust the audio or video, which is a hassle. It's not insurmountable. The GoPro, this is an HD Hero 2. It costs like $300 now, $200 now. You get a 32 gig card is good for an hour and a half or 2 hours, which is all we ever do. And it's pretty good quality video at 1080p for the cost. I also like that it's a crazy wide angle. We just set it right up on the table next to us or on a ladder or something like that. I almost always have multiple mounts in the bag. This is just it's a 3M sticky surface bottom thing. Because the GoPro ecosystem has so many different mounts, like there's always options. Here's a suction cup.
It's way more recommended to use this than your iPhone or smartphone to record long videos. Yeah,
the smartphone's going to have the same drift problem, probably is going to be worse. It will also get real hot and your battery will die. A webcam's not a bad solution, actually. You can get a pretty high-quality webcam. This is a tripod mount for the GoPro. We use that fairly regularly, just on a monopod or a small tripod, like a GorillaPod or something like that. Webcams are a fine solution. Like I stream Spelunky fairly regularly. Webcam aimed at my head is more than sufficient for that. You don't need to get anything fancy.
Thousands of vloggers agree.
Yeah, the Logitech makes, for $50 you can get a Logitech webcam that will look great. You said vlogger.
I think that's how you're actually supposed to say it.
Really?
Vlogger.
It's not vlogger?
No.
I feel so old. I'm trying to think what else we have. Occasionally, when we're out and about, like when we went to CES and we did a podcast with Nathan, rather than carry the downside of these base mic stands is that those weights are about 15 pounds each. So you don't want to check that on the plane. In a pinch, we've used our studio lavs as podcast mics. There are some real problems with that. There's a really, really small range that you can get in on for the kind of levels that I want for podcasting without clipping the moment somebody coughs or goes over volume or something. And also, studio lavs are crazy expensive. These microphones are $300 or $400 each. They are not ideal for this. They're great for when we're on the show floor and don't want to get a bunch of ambient noise, but they're not so good for podcasting. And you lose the benefit of using a large diaphragm microphone like the HE2035 is that you get a much richer, kind of more room filling. Voices sound richer. I sound better. You sound better than we do in the real world, just because it's capturing so much of what makes our voice our voice.
All right.
Last piece is software.
You mentioned GarageBand, Audition.
GarageBand is perfectly fine. It's also, you have to buy a Mac to get it, so it's not exactly great. Audacity is a free audio editor. I've used that before. It's actually really good at fixing broken files. We
can import, for example, from the H6.
Yeah, the H6 produces WAV files, so anything can import from the H6. That's the beautiful part about the H6. There's no proprietary audio format there. They do provide some metadata if you want to use their particular tool to kind of figure out some other stuff, but you very rarely need that. Most of the time I just grab the WAV files, drag them straight into whatever program I use. I've actually started using Adobe's audio editor, which is called Audition. Joey had recommended it as a pretty solid audio editor. It's not as fully featured as something like Pro Tools, I don't think. I haven't used Pro Tools, so I don't know, but that's what the internet says. The nice thing about Audition is that it has pretty good filter and effects presets to do things like audio compression, which is not converting a wave to an MP3 and making the bit smaller. But what it does is it shrinks
the waveforms.
It doesn't crop. It shrinks them all down to the same level, and then you bring the amplitude back up so they're loud again. So when you compress, you bring the highest volumes down to the lowest volumes, so everything's more or less level, and then you make everything big again.
What about that program Levelator? Is that what it basically
Levelator does the same thing. I find I used to get complaints from people when I used Levelator. Since I started using there's specifically a podcast preset in Audition that does a really good job with the voice stuff. Since I started using that, no one's complained, which, anecdotes, but somebody's always complains about podcast audio.
Well, now that they've seen all the gear we use, there is no reason to complain.
Well, and then the last bit is Premiere. So for the studio podcast, we don't do YouTube. We stream directly to YouTube. There's no editing there. What you see is what happens in the room as it happens. We can't even start and stop it. It's also why there's that little short black period of dark before the show starts.
Right.
Because it's hard to sync up telling YouTube when to start and when to bring the levels up.
But if you're combining video from the GoPro,
yeah, when I combine video from the GoPro, I have to do that in Premiere or video editor. It doesn't have to be Premiere. We've used Final Cut. I've used some other stuff in the past. It's tricky getting audio and video syncs. If you ever see the raw files for the videos, we always clap. It's why we judge our claps, because everybody claps differently, and some people are just terrible at it. Getting the audio and video synced over a 2-hour video is a real hassle. Because you're dealing with multi-part video files, sometimes multi-part audio files, and it's a significant challenge. But then we put bumpers and stuff like that on the Premiere file and blast it up to YouTube. If you're starting at home,
buy everything.
No.
Oh, okay. Don't buy everything.
A $60 blue Snowball microphone sounds great. Make sure you put it in the cardioid setting. I think it's preset 1 on mine. If you think you're going to go and do XLR and you want to do USB as well, you don't want to buy a mixer now, maybe you'll buy one in the future. This Behringer is a great mixer. It's $80. You do need to buy a USB audio interface to go with that. The one that they typically pair with it is about $30. It's the UA102, I think. UCA202. You don't want to use your USB sound card that came with your headphones or something like that. That's not going to do what you want. The Blue Snowball is a great way to start. The Yeti, you can get a Yeti that has both XLR inputs and USB inputs, lets you choose back and forth. That's kind of the step up from the Snowball. Yeah. It's a great mic. It's a lot more expensive for the XLR and USB one. It's like $250. $50 webcam. Look for something that does 1080p or 720p.
Good field of view.
Decent field of view is good. More importantly than that,
field of view.
Yeah, I was going to say, more importantly than that is a good stand. The old Logitech C215s, I think, were great. They put that stand on like 4 different webcams now, so just, it folds and twists, and you can hook it on different stuff. It's nice. And then for software, Garageband or Audacity, really all you need to get started. Start doing your show. If you want to do hosting, archive.org does podcast hosting. You can use a service like Squarespace or DreamHost or something like that. Yep. Don't just put the files in your Dropbox. Dropbox will turn off your account if you do that. It's bad.
And if you want to find audio music clips, there's a ton of resources. Creative Commons licensed music sound bites.
Yeah, if you're going to do music and post video on YouTube, you've got to be careful with that, because even if it's Creative Commons, somebody will have claimed it and you'll get your channel shut down. If you're just posting audio to iTunes or something like that, go nuts. Nobody's going to cause you problems there. There's no automated system that comes by and sends you nasty grams. So that's our podcast gear setup. I don't think I forgot anything. Always have lots of cables. They're important. There's a ton of cables under the desk here.
Oh, you don't want to see that.
Yeah, I think that's it. If you have questions, post them in the comments. We'll answer. And subscribe to the channel if you like this kind of weird navel-gazing content.
Professionalism.
Yeah. We'll see you guys later.
Bye.